iDubbbz, or Ian for our purposes here, is one of the most interesting YouTubers on this platform. And it's not because of his content, not necessarily, anyway. What makes Ian such an engaging YouTuber case study is his transformation, and particularly his fanbase's response to said transformation. As a member of Ian's fanbase myself, at least in a casual way, I feel fairly well versed enough in both Ianology and iDubbbzianism to speak somewhat authoritatively on the subject. If you know anything about this guy, you'll know how pissed off many of his fans are for how much he's changed in recent years. But before I get into the swing of things here, I should make it clear that I do not count myself as one of the people who is irrationally mad at Ian for broadening his horizons, considering how his actions online might affect people, and let's be real here, growing up in general. I'm not even that mad about the mullet-mustache combo. Curtis Connor should be, but I don't have a dog in that fight. To understand why many iDubbbz fans feel betrayed,
what we do here is go back.
Back in the mid-2010s, iDubbbz saw a meteoric rise thanks to his now legendary Content Cop series. In these videos, he would throw on a cheap Halloween cop costume, choose YouTube's most despised villain of the week, and quote-unquote police the platform by painstakingly detailing what makes his target's creative output subpar, lazy, reprehensible, or all of the above. iDubbbz did Content Cop episodes on notoriously hated creators like Leafy, Keemstar, and Tana Mongeau. Back then, I was a pretty big fan of Ian's work. In 2016, my 22-year-old self might as well have been the poster boy for iDubbbz's core demographic. A kid in his early 20s too smart to be watching Leafy and Keemstar, but too dumb and listless to be focusing on college or other productive things. But if you were on YouTube at that time, you'll have a good idea of how much more rough and lawless the platform was. In many ways, it was fun and exciting. You had creators like Ian and Ethan Klein taking lazy, obnoxious channels down a peg in hilariously succinct fashion. The prankster/fake social experimenter bubble of the early 2010s was popping, and iDubbbz was the biggest and best YouTuber to capitalize on the aftermath. But it didn't take long for that rough YouTube landscape to start catching up with a rapidly softening culture. In 2017, the so-called YouTube adpocalypse caused mass demonetization for channels that messed around with R-rated subject matter at all. It was mostly political channels that took the brunt of the demonetization hit, but channels like iDubbbz and H3H3 were also forced to rethink the way their channels were operating. Now, I'm not saying a fear of demonetization was the core motivation for Ian's recent change, but it certainly could have had something to do with it. As we approached the 2020s, YouTube and its viewers had much less of an appetite for that line-crossing, uber-edgy content cop humor. In the commentary arena, the anti-SJW quote-unquote skeptic community that dominated the mid-2010s was overtaken by a new wave of left-leaning video essayists. Everything about the platform was in a state of flux, and those channels that were unwilling or unable to shift their focuses found themselves floundering. Which brings us to today. Just a few hours ago, I watched this video Ian recently made called I Miss the Old iDubbbz. In the video, he does a pretty great job of outlining why he changed, what his old content means to him, and how he feels about those members of his audience that wish he could revert back to the Content Cop days. I know a lot of Ian's fans find his transformation disappointing, but I have to say I found myself relating to and agreeing with a lot of what he said in the video. Some of it could be taken as overly apologetic or even cloying at points, but I understand and respect why Ian is so distressed about all of this. I'm not the same guy I was when I was 22, and it's unfair and unrealistic to expect Ian or anyone else to avoid maturation and growth just to satisfy an audience they garnered when they were that age. Luckily, I didn't have a camera on myself when I was 22. Ian did, and a lot of what he said hasn't really aged well. If I were in his shoes, I'm sure I'd feel similarly. Before I started writing the script for this video, I checked out some of Ian's new content, which I admittedly hadn't seen in years, and I genuinely enjoyed it. It's miles away from Content Cop or Kickstarter crap in terms of tone, but it's still undeniably coming from the same guy we all watched back in those days. But there was one major sticking point I had with Ian in this half apology, half explainer video he made.
I've just always had this dumb philosophy that I'm not responsible for, my audience and how they behave beyond what content I put out. And that's stupid. And it's led to a lot of hate and a lot of bad outcomes. And I just want to make it clear that I am absolutely responsible for my audience. And, I guess if you want to, look out for people who are red flags, it's definitely people who had my mentality that say, I'm not responsible for what my audience does.
I think where Ian veers off track is when he starts talking about this concept of taking responsibility for his audience. Now, this isn't a line of thinking exclusive to Ian, because I've seen countless successful YouTubers, influencers, artists, and content creators of all stripes say similar things. If Ian means, for example, I should hold myself somewhat accountable for the fans who chose to harass Leafy after his content cop, I can see where he's coming from. However, if he means he should hold himself accountable for the actions and words of his fan base throughout other areas of the internet, or even the real world, I think that's bizarre, untrue, and even a bit egotistical. Let's use this as an example. I was a casual fan of Ian back in 2016. I watched all of his content cop videos and some of his Kickstarter crap ones as well. Now let's say, hypothetically, I proceed to act like an asshole on Twitter, Reddit, or YouTube comment section days or weeks after watching iDubbbz content. How, in any way, is Ian responsible for what I did? Ian might have over 7 million subscribers, and especially back then, rake in millions upon millions of views, but for him to believe that even a small percentage of those people would mistake him for some kind of thought leader or role model whose behavior should be emulated is kind of narcissistic, no? I feel bad singling out Ian because, like I said before, this opinion isn't unique or new. It's widespread, and honestly, it reduces the people who enjoy these creators' content to little more than mindless drones who take their cues from these golden gods like Ian and Tana Mojo. The only thing Ian is responsible for is what he says and does, and that goes for anyone online with any kind of audience. A YouTuber might have a subscriber count in the multi-millions, but how many of those people even watch the content? How many haven't watched in years? How many watch casually? Some people engage with YouTubers only as a form of light entertainment while they're going to work, making breakfast, or taking a shit. For these creators to genuinely believe they make a lasting psychological impression on any significant portion of their subscriber base is a little delusional. But if I can end the video on a more positive note, it's genuinely nice to see how much Ian has grown since those content cop days. Like I said, I enjoyed those videos back in the day, but everything has an expiration date. Who Ian is now might be off-putting to some of the fans who loved him then, but I would ask those people what they realistically want from this guy. Do you want him to keep making content unnatural and unaligned to who he is in 2023 just because you want more of a thing you used to love 7 years ago? Or might it be better to just find other people to watch and leave him and his work alone if you don't like the direction? Letting go is hard, and it's even harder to accept that things made in 2016, which really doesn't feel that fucking long ago, is starting to feel like another era of culture entirely. Anyway, what do you think of all this? Is Ian right for acting like the Uncle Ben of YouTube?
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Are you afraid that I'm gonna turn into some kind of...
Curious to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching.